Okay, welcome to today's session of the training. Um, Please go ahead and let me confirm that you can hear by typing the screen. You can just use the comment section to type that you can hear excellently well. So today we shall have the last side of the training. That's the last lab, which have to do with selection, reference check, and as well as background check. We began this training discussing about the recruitment as well as the job analysis, job description. Then we went after to talk about other details which was treated yesterday. We focused more on uh, that's the recruitment selection and how we can be able to interview. So we discussed yesterday about interviewing and what we talked about the selection process partly. So today we're going to focus on the selection itself. Then we'll talk about reference check, background verification. If I think if I reference that again, we started with recruitment and we talked about job description and as well as the job analysis. Then we talked about shortlisting, profile reviews. That's what we did yesterday. Shortlisting, profile reviews, and as well as that's more like the selection process. Then today we're going to be talking about the selection proper, which includes selection, reference check, and background verification. Okay, so going into the outline, which we already listed, what we're going to be talking about is profile selection, reference check, background verification. Now, I wouldn't want to waste much time, so we'll just go straight into the conversation. So please move straight with me into the first slide. It has to do with profile selection. Okay, so now let's start with the selection itself. The selection itself is, in a summary, finding the right person to fill the given position. When we find the right person to fill the given position, what exactly, how do we get to find out the right person to fill the given position for this role? And so this brings us to the selection criteria. Now, for us to be able to find the right person to fill the role, we know we started with how creating the job description. We talked about doing job analysis, coming up with the specifications for that job, finding that is to know how do we know who is right and what this job demands. So we'll come up with those details, and at the end of the day, we'll say, okay, this is exactly the kind of profile that we're looking for when we did the job analysis, job description, and specification. Then now we moved over to the shortlisting aspect where we focused more on review, screening, the applications. Then we went ahead to talk about the methods that we can use to screen and sift through the profiles, at least to get credible candidates to interview with, because we have multiple applications that possibly do not align with what we actually publish. Then we'll go ahead to talk about the next one that we talked about shortlisting, and as well as at the end of the day, we talked about after the shortlisting, we talked about the interviewing process. So we interview with the candidate, and now we are in the selection stage. How then do we come up with this selection stage? So we move on to the criteria. That criteria helps us to say, okay, we have a desirable. Yesterday we talked about essential versus desirable. So we have desirable versus the essential things that we require for this particular role. So as long as the essentials are met, we definitely will have to push along with it. So, but we're not saying that the desirable does not matter. Of course, the desirable actually matters. What we're talking about here is to ensure that the essentials for the role are actually met. What is required for this job role is met. That the candidate, whoever it is that will speak, actually fits into the role. Then we'll go ahead to talk about the realistic requirements, which is second on the list. Realistic requirements doing this selection criteria. At least I said yesterday that there are a lot of things that will be listed there. But the main thing is from the scorecard and from all the score assessments that have been done, at least the candidate should be above, far above average, which within the very good zone, very good and excellent zone. So it have good, very good. So those form of remarks. So when we have candidates within that particular category, yes, at least they are okay to be invited and discussed with via over an interview. So this helps us to ensure that at least a large number has been pulled out. Remember that when applications when vacancies like this are published, you have thousands of applications for that particular role. So it's a very tough job coming up with the right candidate. Of course, this all that we've been discussing is actually the process to coming up with this shortlist. Then we talked about then if I finalize on that realistic requirements. So this helps us understand that yes, these are the requirements that are set, but they will have a skill. When a candidate reaches this particular skill, it means okay, yes, they are viable, so we can go ahead to interview them. That's what we're talking about. Then in the process of when they have been interviewed and they still kill that particular category, that means they are very much of special candidates. So we want to pick like the top 5 out of this skill and they move on to discuss or meet with the management. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the future needs. That's future skills that are needed. For instance, there are some criteria. These are some of the criteria that are so used for selection. Now we have, let's take for instance that we have very good top-notch 15 people, 15 profiles that we've been able to pull through out of all the thousands that are applied. Okay, so these are basic things that we want to use to assess them and ensure that okay, this particular person who we want to shortlist, like these 3 people, these top 3 that we want to bring on board, that we want them to meet with the management, actually has the basic things that we require, and one of them is that future skills. Take for instance that we will definitely be needing. We need someone who have customer service skill and someone also who can do telemarketing. So in that instance, so this person can, if this person has telemarketing skills or this person has done telemarketing before, it means that they have telemarketing experience. So it gives them an edge over the other. So these are some skills that can be used. Then we talk about let's say some trending skills at the moment, more like the digital marketing skills and the rest of that. So this particular skill is very much important. So it puts this person ahead of whoever it is that we want to, of the remaining people on that particular list. So these skills that are required, more like a future skill that is required. For instance, if we're going to be needing so XYZ skill in the next 6 months or in the next 1 year, it means that this person is much more a viable prospect than the remaining of the 15. Then let's talk about specialty skills. There are specialty skills that are required for that particular role. Once that specialty skill, of course, that particular one is not negotiable. There are specialty skills that are required. Yesterday, when I was responding to certain questions, someone asked with regards to basic skills that are required for the role or some experience that when they don't have it, there's no point even going ahead with such kind of interviews if the whoever it is that was if whoever it is that submitted application does not even meet with those specialty skills that are required, then they don't need it. As long as the job demands it, then they need to have those specialty skills. Then I'll go ahead to talk about reference check. Yes, we did, but I talked a little about that reference check yesterday. We said when the interview is okay, like we'll come up with top 5. Okay, these 5 people are very great. So we want to reach out to the reference that they have provided. Now, from the reference report, we want to have the most satisfactory are the ones who will now scale that top 3 that we want to meet with the management. Then we'll go ahead also to talk about a verification report. But in the next slide, in the next session, we're going to, in the next section, that's in the second section, we're going to be discussing detailedly about that reference check, and also we're going to be discussing detailedly about background verification. These are the key things that are done. All we need to understand the fact that reference check and as well as background verification are not the same, even though they can be lumped up together, but they are different. Okay, so this background verification, we'll get to understand what exactly is being done there and what does it signify, what do we do with background verification. So then finally we talked about that scorecard assessment yesterday. Talked about scorecard assessment and how it can be developed. So this scorecard assessment also forms part of the criteria amongst all the lists that we have just discussed here, that they form the list for the assessing and coming up and saying these particular candidates fall within the range of the people that we want. So at the end of the day, we have, let's say we have 15 and we want to move them to 5. So at that 5, possibly we are doing a reference check and background check. Now, where we will have to move them to that 5 is in case we have we have 3, and one of the 3 decides, okay, maybe they get a job elsewhere, or one of the 3 decides not to continue. then you have someone from that remaining 2 that you can pull into the 3 as well. So that's why you have 5. While some we have 3, we have 5, we have 15. So within this 5 is what we are picking to step up into that 3, should in case another one person falls short, or the management disapproves of that particular profile. Okay, I think this brings us to the end of this particular list. So now let's consider the red flags in selecting a candidate. Now, remember that this selection, the person has gone through all the processes. Now we at the selection stage where we have to make decisions. Remember, while we're interviewing, we will have to ask certain questions. So now this brings us to the red flags. You want to ask questions to investigate and find out, why did this person leave where they were working before, in the places where they work. For instance, they left XYZ organization, and they left another, so they left another. So you want to find out, okay, why did you leave this organization? So you want to get the exact reason why they left. When people leave, they have a reason for leaving, and oftentimes it might be positive and also might be negative. So you want to understand, why did they leave that particular organization. So in the instance we discussed about this yesterday, where if this is not actually well, if it does not sit well, more importantly, if the reason why that candidate left the take, for instance, that it was a fraud accusation or a fraud, so you may want to investigate more. Take, for instance, maybe it was more like it was more like a chaotic situation why that person had to leave, or the management had to force them to leave the organization. So it means that there's something there that needs to be much more investigated. So why did they leave? Is a very, very much important question, and you need to find out. So for every single person you're discussing, you want to find out, okay, why did you leave this particular organization? It's just a simple question, and from the reply they give, you want to know if it's an honest answer or no. Then how did they leave? Matters a lot. How did they leave? When we're talking about how they left the organization, it's imperative that every single person who is leaving should exit properly, so that such that, take for instance, if they left in a manner that's not so great, and as you're doing a background check with that particular on that particular candidate, and you reach out to the organization and they're giving a very negative report about that candidate. The candidate is excellent, is awesome, but when it came to resignation, the person just left abruptly. So, for instance, for me, there was a particular report I got. I think that was 2 weeks ago. But candidate who does an employee who does uh, 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 started within the middle of the month, but yet you were paid for full, you were paid in full, and he just resigned. So people try to play smart. There's a reason why these things. I understand that. I've come across a lot of situations, and I have very good experience with this. So now, there are reasons people can do that. For instance, they might just be on a study leave, and they're looking to defraud another organization. They are on a study leave and they pretend as though they are job seekers. So they go looking, so you have like 3 months guaranteed by your organization, and so you just go ahead. So during that 3 months, they go job hunting. You just start you get a job somewhere, pretend as though you actually want to get that job, or you want to take on that job. And once you are paid, boom, you just resign, because that the person actually does not want that job. So they just want that money and they walk away. That's exactly so. In these particular things, but most times most candidates do not know that these things have a way of backfiring. You don't just go ahead and do as you wish or as you like. Then secondly, there are candidates, when they are on leave, they want to use the opportunities. They want to use their leave and also you get opportunities elsewhere, and maybe just work for 15 days, and possibly maybe towards the end of the month they pay you and you walk away. So most times people think they are smart, but these things have negative effects on the person's reputation. For instance, if a great opportunity comes up tomorrow, because the truth is, as people progress, the higher you go, the more deeper investigations or the more deeper verifications to be done on you. That's the way it works. So in that instance, when people do not take cognizance of the fact that there is a future, and certain of their actions that they take can affect them in the future, they tend to behave anyhow. But when the repercussion comes, they cry the victim. Okay, I think I've done a lot of justice on that. Let's go ahead on to talk about the staying power. Now, I want to analyze from the CV. You're saying, okay, this person joined. Let's say this person joined in 2020, and in 2020 January, by 2020, by September 2020, they've joined another organization. By May 2021, they are in another place. By another 6 months, they are another. Like you want to check it, 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, 3 months. Like you, when you see these inconsistencies, these are red flag. Such candidate does not have staying power. So in that instance, this person who does not even like in that particular process, you don't want. But why we left that particular stage to discuss about that in the interview and selection process? Because sometimes there are reasons. You might just see that, but if it's is a contract, it might have been a contract job. Take for instance, it might be just a 3 months project, and they are hired on to take on that 3 months project. So that's why if it's a great profile, you want to get in touch with the person to find out this short stay that you have here, what exactly is going on. So, but some candidates do not fail to realize the fact that if it's a short stay, indicates there that this is a contract job and it lasts between 3 months. So they fail to indicate that on their CV. So when you have candidates who do not indicate that on their CV, then it is okay. But as long as their profile is great, reach out and find out those details from them. But if the reasons why they left is possibly maybe because they had a fight with the supervisor, or they have colleagues who they cannot tolerate, and so a lot of things, a lot of reasons they give that does not sit well. Maybe you want to say, oh, this particular one is not so great because most people have certain issues, but in this part of the world, sometimes we don't take the psychological health very seriously, such that we can go see a psychologist, talk to a psychologist. So we believe when people are always stigmatized, we need to do so well in accepting the fact that can go see a therapist, and it's not bad to go see a therapist. But when people have issues, that when they have this kind of issues, they keep it within themselves and they don't go see a therapy to help them associate better, socialize better. So for instance, when they have issues, when people disagree with them, they have issues having a negotiation or having a dialogue. So in that instance, they feel offended. They turn it it degenerates into a fight. So those kind of people would have less staying power in an organization. Very little things put them off. And when people like this are even when people like, for instance, when I meet with people like this, I find a very suitable way to encourage them that it is okay to see a therapy. It is very much okay. There's no stigma about it. There's nothing bad. There's nothing evil about seeing a therapist that can help you improve your social function and social life. So you can relate well within your workspace. Okay, that said, let's quickly go ahead and talk about the previous work records. Of course, this particular one will be more like the reports you are going to be getting from the references that are being conducted, and as well as the background checks that will be done. You get the information about that particular candidate. So in that instance, this particular place focuses more on their candidates where most people when they take on a job, they just want to do it, and they just want to do it for the pay. They just get the pay and they walk away. Why? There are some people who are smarter, they do it for the experience. So they want to learn, they want to gather every single knowledge that they could get on that particular job. So this is a different type of person. So but we will have someone who just wants to do the job, who just want to get paid, and so they do it anyhow and they walk away. So in that instance, the records that they will have is going to be terrible. Remember when I was making emphasis in the previous training, I talked about the fact that there are some that if someone is saying that they are a result-oriented person, that right from their CV you can even deduce that right from their CV. I discussed detailedly about that, and I believe you must have taken notes of that. Okay, so now this brings us to the common pitfall. Let's move over to the next slide that talks about the common pitfalls with selection processes. So now one of them is bad impression. Now, when talking about bad impression here now is the two-way side, both from the recruiter and that's the recruiter or the HR officer, or the applicants themselves. So if the applicant gives a bad impression and the recruiter also gives a bad impression, both of them can. Now, how can they, during the interview, remember somebody asked a question, somebody might be very good for a job, but their presentation is poor, or their ability to make good impressions is poor. I think that is a place where they ought to develop themselves. Remember, the response I gave to that particular question was that the candidate, the HR officer or the recruiter is supposed to give a feedback, help them understand the fact that they could work on their presentation skills. If you have materials you could share with them, that is great. If you could help them with the materials that they could use or focus on to improve their presentation, that would be great. I also talked about the fact that if it is not critical for that particular job role, I made mention so that I'm not going back again to them. So if it is not critical to the job role, then it can be overlooked to some extent. Then if it is something that can be improved on to some, there's to certain rate, but there are some of them that it is very, very critical to the role. So if that person is able to make the right impression, definitely they will have to just walk away. Then the same for the recruiter or the HR officer. The HR officer needs to provide, or needs to create the right impression. Now, the right impression with regards to the kind of candidate that we're looking to hire, then also the kind of candidate that the kind of candidates the organization would prefer to work with. Then, what kind of people work within this particular organization? So these things, these are the impression that it creates. So from the HR officer, the recruiter, as well as the candidates themselves, each person has a part to play. Then we'll talk about core skills assessment. So this is on the part of the HR officer or the recruiter, where the detailed assessment needs to be done. So you don't just, it's not like an assumption. You're not assuming. So remember I talked about the scorecard, where every single detail about how this candidate emerged needs to be documented, needs to come up. So we say, okay, like this is how exactly this candidate emerged from this particular exercise. Okay, then we'll talk about neglecting references. References are provided. In the instances where references are not provided, information needs to be asked. So you need to get those information from the candidate to verify from their previous places of work, okay, that this is the kind of person that they are. And so you do not just neglect the references. If references are not provided, request for it. And when they are provided, follow through and get the details that are there, because sometimes there are information that may be underlying them. Okay, so now let's talk about unstructured processes, of course, so more like the different approaches. Well, I understand the fact that sometimes there could be reverse engineering, but that's not what we're talking about. What we're saying here is processes that are not so stable, processes that are not so great. So, but this has nothing to do with the HR; it has more to do with the organization. So, if the organization does not have a structured process for the recruitment exercise, then there's an issue. So, this does not necessarily concern the HR officer or the recruiter. It concerns the organization and the heads in the HR department. Okay, now we'll talk about the overly lengthy processes. Of course, this one also concerns the organization and the HR department, the heads in the HR department. Okay, so now with this brings us to the summary. The summary of this selection process in selecting a candidate. I'm going to run through. This is all that we will be discussing for the past 2 days. We said, how do we come up with a candidate that is great for this particular role? And the key activities that we considered thus far has been the candidate application process. We talked about the screening exercise, how do we screen the profiles and screen all maybe the thousands of applications to the current one that we have. Let's say we want to come up with 20, and at that 20 we want to come up with the 5 that we want, and from the 5 we pick the 3. Okay, so now this helps us. Then we'll talk about the skills assessment testing. So such that I make the reference to take, for instance, that we want to hire for a software developer. That a software developer, yes, we're going to do the physical, that's the oral conversation, oral interview, but you're going to still have to do, because in fact, the main interview is actually the practical interview, where you have to show us what you can do. It's not just about saying I can do this and I can do that. Everybody can say that I can do this, but what the practice or the practical is the main thing, is the main deal. Then we'll talk about shortlisting. Now, the shortlisting process, that's exactly what we discussed yesterday. We're talking about how then did we come about this number. Then we were able to pull down from, let's say, 1,500 applications to 20. It was definitely going to be a very tough process, but to come up with those top 20 out of that 1,500 applications that came in. So that we discussed that in the length. So maybe you might just go take a look at, take a listen to what we discussed yesterday on that one. So now then we'll go ahead to talk about the reviewing, the interviewing process. So once we've shortlisted, we want to go ahead to interview to ensure, okay, that this 20 that we've been able to be shortlisted are very great for this profile. From that 20, we want to now pick the top 5, and that top 5 goes ahead. We pick the top 3 again from that top 5. the remaining two are more like want to keep them as I want to keep them as a fallback in case the three one out of the three has an issue, or a person any profile within the three does not make it. We want to bring in some others from the remaining two. Then we'll talk about the reference check. So reference check is sort of what I'm going to be discussing, what we are actually doing today. Reference check, then the background checks. We're going to consider that in the subsequent sections. Then decision making as well as the job offer. Okay, I think this brings us to a close of the first section of the training. And we're now going to go into the reference check, which is the second section. Remember that while having this session, we've always talked about kindly take notes about your questions. Write them down, put them in a place where you not forget them, so that when we are done with all the sessions, every single question that you would want to ask, you can now ask them afterwards, and we'll take them up from there. So the question and answer sessions will be towards the end of the class. So now we're talking about reference check. Now, reference check, what exactly is reference check? What do we want to do? Like, what exactly is reference check? What should we do with it? Now, reference check is actually getting reports from supervisors, peers, subordinates who have known this person or have worked with that particular applicant throughout their work history. So these are the people that you want to discuss with. So, and more importantly, take for instance somebody who has a very long work history. You want to focus on references that are more recent. If that person had maybe started working, let's say in 1999, you don't want to go and start calling people at 1990. No, maybe they must have even changed phone numbers and the rest of that. You want to start with references that are more recent, possibly like in the last 2 or 3 places where they worked. I think would be great, rather than going to maybe the first place where they work, or the second place where they work. Maybe they have worked over 8 places, and you want to, it's going to be so much tedious, and besides, it might just be a dead end getting there. Now, so what we're saying at the essence, in essence, is reference check practically means reaching out to people who are related with this applicant in a workplace, in a work setting, maybe as a team, as peers, as supervisors, subordinates, so people who has interacted with this person. You want to find out what kind of person that they are. You want to hear from them first. Now, this helps us understand the fact that most people from their reference, they put maybe their pastors, their imam, their community leader, they put them as reference. It's okay, but you can get that as an addition, as a backup. But the top 2 references that you should request for are references within the workplace. Then you can now get references. Those other ones are more like for good reports or good conduct, where you can now get reports from their imams, from their pastors, from their community heads, the traditional rulers. That's what you want to get. So then, now let's go ahead to talk about the steps in conducting a reference check. What exactly do we need to do? So now, when you reach out to the organization, or reach out to the reference that was provided, you want to introduce yourself. Very importantly, just straight to the point, introduce yourself, then state the purpose for which you have reached out to them. Very much important. Introduce yourself, state the purpose for which you have reached out to them, familiarize and make it brief. Then go ahead and ask your question. Go straight to the point, because you've stated the fact that, okay, this is exactly the reason why you are here, the reason why you are making this call. Then if it's a reference check that demands that you have to visit that particular organization where they are located to ascertain the fact that they are there. I understand the fact that certain organizations may no longer be existent, but as a result of maybe it got liquidated and maybe the investors had to leave and the rest of that. I understand the fact that organizations can pack up. So in that instance, that is still, but they worked with people. They worked with, that's where, okay, those people, as long as they are not there, they're still alive. I reach out to them and find out, okay, this person, when you work with this person, what would they like? So you want to get all those information at that time. Then let's go ahead to talk about, remember, okay, on the final notes on this, we'll talk about that the reference can be a written, that can be a written one or a verbal one. So we'll talk about even can also be a physical, that is, you can just go there physically. Then when we talk about, more importantly, what we say written or verbal, that's oral, means that it has to be documented. Now, when you're having that the verbal documentation, it should not form every part of that particular reference check. There's a need to ensure that like there's a documentation to whatever you're doing. So at the end of the day, there's evidence. That's where I'm heading. There's evidence. So that's why the written part of it is best. So after you finish introducing yourself, you can let them know, okay, they're going to send it. They will with regards to it, so they can just respond to it based on the reference based on the reference you want to get from them, based on the report you want to get from them. So they go ahead and reply to the mail. So you have called, you've introduced them yourself. So it is for them now to give you a reply. So that particular reply is what you are going to be archiving. It's going to form part of the files that will be archived for that particular candidate when they finally get employed. Okay, now what questions exactly do we even ask when we reach out to these references? We want to verify the name of the candidate. That is very much important. When we get in contact with the reference, what we want to do is after the introduction and the rest of that, the first step is to verify that they know they actually actually know the candidate's name. So we say, okay, XYZ has asked that we reach out to you as they provided your details as their reference, and they asked that we reach out to you to get a report from you on what they have done, where they have worked, and their conducts throughout the period where they worked with the organization. So and remember, when references are provided, the basic details that are required for that reference includes the name of that reference, that is the name of the person, the designation, their contact details, that's both, it could be both phone numbers, email, and possibly the office address or where they work. This information is very much important. Take, for instance, for people to reach them via email, you reach them via their phone immediately, or we could visit their office to go have an interaction with them. Very imperative that these details are there. Then, in the instance where we visit the office and possibly maybe that reference have actually moved on to another organization, so at least we still have their phone number and we still have their email. So we have those to still reach out to that particular reference. Let's now take, for instance, that we've tried this. We reach out to the email, there's no response. We call that particular phone number, there's no response. We reach out to the organization, the reference is no longer working there. So what does it mean? Not to get back to the candidate and say, okay, this reference is invalid. Kindly provide another. So okay, now I just need to rephrase on that before I continue with the questions that we need to ask. So now, coming back to the questions that need to be asked. So when we reach out to this reference, we want to verify the name of the candidate. We will help them understand, okay, this is the candidate that has asked that we reach out to them. Then on the second note, we want to find out, how did they even get to know this candidate? Where did they meet? How did they get to know? What's the relationship that exists between them? That is, so we want to know the kind of relationship. So is he a supervisor, a subordinate relationship? Is he a peer relationship? A subordinate to subordinate? So we need to know what kind of relationship exists between this reference and the candidate who has supplied their information. Then we want to go ahead and talk about we want to ask them this: why should we hire this candidate? What makes them good for this particular role? Yes, we've heard that this is what, but now, can you recommend them for this role? What exactly can they do? So I believe an honest reference, but I understand the fact that there are most people who will say, okay, and they just want to say good about, so it's not seem as though that's not so great. But as a HR or as a recruiter, you need to be very at alert to understand where the reference is actually just playing along or just saying anything to make sure that the candidate gets the job. So we're not just relying on that. Remember that this reaching out to the reference is just to ensure that this person actually has a good report. So we're not just taking the reference word at that. We are still going to review this particular thing that this person is saying. Is it actually okay? So by the questions you're going to be asking, remember you previously interviewed with that person, you've interviewed with them, and you understand you've come to understand what they did in the places where they work. So if the reference says something that is contradictory to what you've already interviewed with the guy, so it means that they are not even aligning, then there's an issue. So it means maybe one of them might not be telling what is accurate there. Okay, so then in that instance, you may just want to reach out to the candidate and as well, that's when you are thoroughly verified from that reference to ensure that, okay, this is exactly what they do by rephrasing the question in different forms and they give you the same reply, then it means that, oh, somebody must not be telling the right thing here. Possibly maybe it's the reference or the candidates themselves. So that's why it's always important that people provide reference about people who know them very well. There are instances where people provide references of people who do not even know details about them, who don't even know a thing about them. When you call, person say, I don't even know anything about the person, like they give a report that is not so great. They're very much important. But that's for the candidates. The candidates are supposed to provide reference about someone who knows them excellently well, so that they can give the feedback, and that's in the workplace. They can talk about their strength, their skills. So now the next question is to have them rate or rank that candidate in that's on a scale of 1 to 10. Have them rate them with, so you're going to have we'll get you're going to have a list of the things that a list of the questions you want to ask them. So those list of questions is and also the skill set where they when they work there, and what the things that they did. Take for instance, they operated certain machines, or maybe they were software developer. So you want to let them, okay, this particular candidate, when they were with you, they were in like a software engineer role. So what was it like? So you want to get the basic information about them, the jobs that they did on a scale of 1 to 10. What was their error rate? What was their accuracy rate? What was their rate to deliver on a job within a timeline? You want to ask those, so those questions, they begin to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. Let's say, okay, the accuracy rate is 7, or the errors in their job, such that, okay, when we finish this particular job, the errors that are being spotted there are on a scale of 1 to 10. What is it like? Then at the end of the day, one will also say, when it comes to meeting deadline, this candidate, like what does it mean for them to meet a certain deadline? Maybe if they have to be followed up, or if they meet their deadline consistently, or they do not even meet up with a deadline consistently. Of course, you're going to get all those information from that supervisor that they have given you. Now, remember, let me quickly rephrase here. There are certain rules that the HR officer or the recruiter is going to insist on the level of the reference that must be provided. Take point, there are some critical rules that you're not references that must be provided must be a supervisory role. Someone who has supervised them before, a reference of a supervisor, or even the line managers, and or even the employer themselves. So you want to you specify the kind of reference that you require. If not, when the references are left blank, then they can provide any kind of reference that they like. So if a person provides a reference, okay, this is wants a supervisory, someone wants a reference within the category of a supervisor, someone who supervised you, or the manager of that particular team or the department, or the main employers who were more like a management team, or one or the direct employer staff. So now let's go ahead to talk about the candidate's strengths and weaknesses. So we also ask questions about candidate strengths and weaknesses. We want to find out. Remember, I was talking about the things that we want them to rate on a scale of this, on a scale. You need to ask those questions so you can get the details about the candidate's strengths and weakness. So you're not just asking the person to list the weakness of the candidate, or list. No, you are going to be applying based on the job role. That, okay, these are the strengths that we require for this role, and these are the strengths that we require for this job role. I want to get them to rate them on this particular. From there, you can deduce, okay, this person is weak here, or this person is strong here. I think that particular one is clear. I would like to take that again. When it comes to candidate strengths and weaknesses, you're not just asking the reference, okay, just mention the weaknesses or mention the strength. No, that's not what we're saying here. What we're saying actually is you are making a list of the basic things that are required for this particular role. So we need to understand their strengths and their weakness around this. So we are now asking the person to rate them on those things that we have listed. So we can now identify from what we have discussed with the reference. We can now say, okay, this is actually where their strength lies. Very much clear. I think that should be elaborate now. Then we're going to talk about the behavior of the candidate. Of course, I understand that I made mention about some people who are unable to work in a space where they like in a team, they have issues working in a team. They worked independently for a very long, so they have issues working in a team. Or maybe they have issues holding a dialogue or holding a debate. So issues like this, or maybe they are rude, or they have the attitude of the behaviors of coming late. There are people like that. I've met with a particular profile who, like, it's like it's ingrained. So they just come late. it's not that they live so far, but they just come late, just arrive late for work. So that's more like an issue. So you can imagine this kind of profile getting into an audit. It has become more like a habit, which will definitely take a conscious effort by that particular candidate to break it. So it's not like the person is living far. Like this, the job where the job is situated and where the candidate lives, actually in less than 15, 20 minutes, the candidate should walk into the organization. We're not even talking about drive into the work, say walk into the organization, and yet you still come late. So it means that something definitely must be wrong there. Okay, so now I think that's that. There are a lot of things that behavioral questions you need to ask, things that connect with that, or that as it connects or as it concerns the organization. There are things that does not matter or that do not concern the organization. That's okay. Now let's go ahead to consider the basic tips for conducting a reference. So now, remember, we said when we get this information or when you get this feedback from the reference, it is imperative to review the answers. You're not just going to swallow every single thing that the person says. Remember that they might just be pals. Like, there are some people who are very good at making pals out of their supervisors. Like, they are so loyal to a fault, and so the supervisor will even do anything for them. So you can imagine those instances. The person just tell you exactly, like, will sell that candidate excellently well. I understand that's not an issue, that's not bad. Of course, it's a very good one for a workplace relationship. Yeah, but what we're saying is at the end of the day, that supervisor should not overhype such kind of, should not like, at least from what we have said earlier in the previous slide, we talked about using methods to identify the strengths and the weakness of that person. So this one will help you to know. So when they are overhyping, because you've asked them questions about the strengths and weaknesses. So when they are overhyping, you can tell. So and you're just going to overlook the overhyping and work with those strengths and weaknesses that we were able to investigate earlier with them. So we'll review the answers and ensure that what this person is saying is actually authentic. Then we'll go ahead to talk about urgency and seriousness. We need to also emphasize the fact that this is urgent and this is very serious. And when we talk about that, this is urgent, it means that we have to follow up. So if you send that reference, take for instance, it was a mail that was sent. You must have you called earlier and discussed, and you sent the mail afterwards. Then once the mail has been sent, you also need to ensure that they have seen that mail. So it's not that, okay, I've called you and I sent a mail to you and I expect your feedback. And at the end of the day, you just you expect that the mail deliver. What if the mail went to the spam folder or actually did not even deliver or delivered to a wrong email address? Maybe there was it was skipped and it entered it was a wrong email address that was sent to. So you must verify, okay, that this particular person reference has gotten the email that was sent to them. Now, the follow-up is done such that, okay, we need this particular, we will need your reply at least in 24 hours. That would be very great. We'll be grateful to have your reply in 24 hours. So, and within that 24 hours, we want to follow up to ensure that they provide the answers or the reply. Then, possibly, if it's going to be 48 hours after 24 hours, just want to still follow up and ensure that they provide that reference. Now, there's also, remember the oral part of the conversation. That oral part of the conversation, you're still going to have a conversation with the person to ensure, okay, that you said this as what you also wrote, so it's more like a confirmation of what they have also said, but that email is more like a documentation of this conversation. Now, we'll go ahead to talk about draft the questions. Remember that if you're going to be, when you're having that oral conversation with the person, you want to ensure that your thoughts are aligned, that your thoughts are properly structured. You're not running around for the right questions to ask. I understand the fact that some new questions might pop up, like questions from answers that they provide. Yes, I understand that. But the key questions that you need answers to must have been applied properly. So you draft the questions and ensure that they provide the replies to that. Then talk about fake references exactly. Now, remember when I talked about when I said earlier, how do we verify this particular reference and ensure that? So I said earlier that now we will have to state what kind of reference we want. We want a reference who is in a supervisory role or a managerial role or in a director role or even the employer. We want a senior level reference. So now that's not just providing any reference. We need to provide all the basic details about that reference. You're helping us understand the name, you're providing the contact, their phone number, their email address, their designation, where they work, where's the address, that where the address of that particular organization is situated. That's you want to ask all those questions and ensure that this reference actually has all the right details. So with this, you can reduce the fact that this reference is right or is authentic, or the reference is actually fake. Many people can just provide any information there, non-existent information. I also acknowledge the fact that some references may have left that organization. Some references may no longer be alive. Some references, a lot of circumstances around. So you want to be certain that whatever reference that we get is actually that is authentic and can be worked with. Okay, so now we'll go ahead to say on a final note, it is imperative that while you are taking reference, while you are taking those information, that you are taking notes. Well, if you're having an oral conversation, take notes, write down details. Then, if in that instance, that's for the ones that are when you're having an oral conversation. But once it is not oral conversation, definitely you have a way of tracking it, which is email. That means they provided their replies via email. Okay, I think this brings us to the end of these tips that are required for reference check. Okay, now let's go ahead to talk about templates for reference check. Now, what is included in that reference check? So these are a few. There are some that also may be required for the references itself. Now, I said earlier that on the reference report, this is not practically for getting the reference information. We're talking about on the reference report. The reference report is supposed to carry a date, it's supposed to carry the candidate's name. The reference report is supposed to carry a date, it's supposed to carry the candidate's name. Then also supposed to carry the details of that reference. The details of that reference, every single detail about them, their name, their designation, their contact details, every single thing about them that was supplied by that particular candidate must be on that particular document. Then we'll go ahead to talk about the list of questions that was asked. Also needs to be documented in that, must be included in that document. The responses that was provided for every of the questions also needs to be included in that document. Then who conducted this reference check? Very imperative. Who conducted the reference check is also needs to be included. Now, I say who conducted the reference check, not just the name, but the name, the designation, the contact detail of the officer who did this reference check is included. Then we'll go ahead to say the signature of the officer who also did, that's the recruiter or the HR officer who did the reference check. All these details are required they are required there. Then that's in the documents that will be submitted. And this one brings us to the end of that section 2 on reference check. And by this, we are going to go ahead to talk about the background check right away. Okay, so now remember that if you have questions, kindly put them down. I'm going to take the questions at the later end of the section. Okay, now this brings us to the third one, background check. What exactly is background check, and how do we begin to work on this? So what exactly is background check? Background check itself is a confirmation of the claims of an individual. So if an individual are provided and said, okay, I can do this, I can do that, I have this information, I have that every single detail that let's say for instance that they said, okay, that they have a HND or a PSC from this particular university, you want to verify that those information is accurate. So that's where verification comes in. That's the background verification. Then we'll talk about their certifications. They have certifications with professional organizations or associations. They have memberships. They listed them on their CV. You know, some people can be very funny. They don't even have a certain. They go ahead and enlist certifications and enlist professional bodies and on their CV, and yet they don't have those certifications. They just write it there, and they actually want to play smart. So, but in these instances, it is wrong for most people to put a claim of something that they do not have on their CV, a certain title on their CV, and yet they don't have those. There's no backup, there's no certification to back those claims. So that's a very wrong one. So now, but more importantly, what we're focusing on is the documents that is being provided by this candidate. Remember now, they're heading to the documentation aspect. So they're going to provide documents. Their certificates, maybe their national youth certificates. They also provide their academic certificates. Every single certificate that they have acquires skills, they provide them. So you want to vet those certificates and ensure that every single thing that they provided there was authentic. Now, prior to even the interview, and now that you're vetting it is also accurate as they have claimed. So verification, background verification means you just want to confirm that what this person claims or who they claim they are is actually who they are. Now, what and how do we even begin to verify? We verify, we verify the previous places of employment. These are the key things that we want to pay close attention to. The previous places where they have worked. Remember when I was having a conversation yesterday, I said that most places, most people just draft places of employment and designations that are non-existent. We tell you that they worked at XYZ places, and that where those organizations are not non-existent, they actually did not exist. Now, remember, I've always acknowledged the fact that organizations can back up. If the question is, was that organization existent? And when it existed, did you even work there while that organization was existing? That's what we're trying to. That's what we're seeking to verify. So you don't just go and put a non-existent organization, and at the end of the day, there's an issue. Then, secondly, this organization is existent, but now, did you work in the capacity that you are claiming to have worked? Take for instance, you were just an officer and you had a supervisor, and at the end of the day, you say you are a team lead. You're not a team lead, but you say you're a team lead, or you're a manager, you're this, you're that. You just claim titles on the CV. It's wrong. So at these instances, these are some of the things that the HR recruiter wants to also pay close attention to. So you don't go claim job titles. This in your offer letter. There's a job title. You want to put there's a designation there. You want to include all these things there. Even the department you work, it's imperative that you structure your CV in such a way that you put it there, and every single thing, every information there stands out and it matches, and to match the verification process. Then when it comes to also the previous employment history, we're still on that. People claim to have different achievements while they were at their places of work. We talked about that. I make reference to training yesterday. So in that instance, you want to verify, did they actually had this accomplishment? Like you have a mind-blowing accomplishment. I was able to secure this business. I was able to get this, that. I was able to deliver this. I was able to lead the team to do this. I brought about this innovation. Like they provide all this amazing information on their CV. And when you get to that particular organization to verify, when you get in touch with a representative of the organization, all these claims are not so true. So it's imperative. I understand that most organizations give credit. So if credit was not given, of course, they make recognitions. If you provide a valuable or able to deliver something, they give an award, they give the recognition. So those recognitions is what stand out. So you put those recognitions on your CV exactly because it was recognized by the organization. So you are not claiming what was not recognized at all. Then we'll go ahead to talk about criminal records. So, academic qualification, I already mentioned it. That's every single details about the academics, from where they schooled to where they were trained to certifications to memberships. You want to verify all those information and ensure that they are accurate. They are not just accurate, but they are authentic. Remember when I was saying that the information that are there, that it is accurate, it is not just true. It's not just that this information are provided, but must look out for half truths. We discussed that yesterday. Must look out for half truths. Half truths here definitely will mean false information. So they have to provide full and authentic information with regards to the academic qualification. Because some people intentionally make omissions with the intention to deceive. So now we want to prevent that. Then we want to talk about criminal records. These are places to look at. There are certain roles you want to look at and want to ensure that you do not have criminal records. For this, take for instance, you're getting into a financial institution, they definitely want to run a background check on you. So we want to ensure that because you're going to be getting involved with money. But this only does not have to do with financial institutions. There are positions that you want to get into. They will have to conduct criminal records on that particular candidate. It's actually a best practice to do, even though it might cost the additional resources to get all this done. But at the end of the day, they may choose or they may not choose to do that. But the question is, it is imperative. Now, why is this imperative for criminal records to be done? on a particular candidate. Take for instance that candidates engaged in a fight and somebody slumped and died within the workplace. So not accurate, but of course if they slumped and died, that means they must go to jail. Down. Let's take for instance that the person has served their prison sentence and they are out. So I'm not saying that they cannot be, they may not repent from what, but at least this is now a debt on their profile. Now, take for instance that that person engaged in a physical combat, such maybe with their subordinate or their supervisor or their peers, and brutally injures such a person. It's on record. That's all. It's encourageable that people do not just engage in physical, not engage physically within the workplace. Of course, more than bringing suspension, oftentimes it can also bring dismissal. In the instance where the audition will have to pay so much, take for instance, they have to conduct a surgery on the person that was brutally injured, then definitely someone has to bear the consequences or will have to bear the financial burden, and it is the parties that are involved in that particular exchange of fiscal conflict. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about the next one. We say reference details, and the details that we get there. Of course, we're going to be reaching out to the reference. These are people who want to reach out and verify certain information that was provided by the candidate. So then the guarantors as well want to get information as well, because we're going to be verifying the guarantors' details. So the details of the guarantor, of course, we verify where the guarantor resides, we verify their workplace. Every detail that was supplied will also be verified. Then the employee details as well as their residential address and all the details that they provided. More importantly, because we are also vetting their records, the academic records, also want to vet where they reside and ensure. Now, this also from the the last two trainings, I've made emphasis on most candidates trying to work around their address. Like, take for instance, I gave a practical example of somebody, maybe the job role is in Lagos and it's on the island, and I'm living at the extreme end or the extreme end of Lagos, maybe on the outskirts of Lagos. Now, but I have an uncle who lives on the island, so I put the uncle's address. I also put my other address, and I refer to that my main address as the permanent residence. So, but I also go and put my uncle's address, or I put my friend's address, I put a relative's address in that particular place. It is actually wrong. Now, in that instance, when the verification is being done, what to do? When we do verification, and that person visits that friend, the relative, or the uncles are like when, how. When this person is not living here, that's the salary report they're going to get. I can imagine. So that's more like after all these processes have been done, and we'll come to this stage only to find out that this particular person does not actually live here. I have a recent experience about that. Candidates who say, okay, that they were actually living on the island somewhere in Lekki, because the job role is located also just next to the Lekki, which is Ikoyi. So the candidate claims that the address was practically stated there. The house, every single thing the address was complete. So now, okay, at the instance where this candidate is going to be interviewed, and finally you don't actually live in this place where you are claiming that you live. So this ought not to be there. Actually live on the outskirts. So these things play around. It play out consistently around. But this is where I believe it practically does not concern the HR officer, it does not concern the recruiter. Who are the candidates is to provide the right address as to where they reside that can be verified, because upon verification, when verification is conducted, the candidate might end up not showing up in that space, and the job role that's the job offer may be withdrawn. Now, we'll talk about others. There are other things to also verify, and it might be based on the job requirements. So when it gets to the list of other things that needs to be required, the HR officer is always notified to do those background check, or the recruiter is also notified to do any of the background verifications that are required. Okay, now this brings us to the benefits for this background verification. I already have said that. I think by now the benefits are actually obvious. It is to mitigate risks. One of them is to mitigate risk of hiring the wrong person within the workspace. It's actually to mitigate that risk from playing out in the first instance. So if you can leave it to the board, there's no point. So all these verifications, all the screening, the checks that are being done is to ensure that we don't even take on the risk of hiring this person. Now, take for instance that we are dealing with, let's say we are dealing with our customers' trust, more like their money and the rest of that, and we're bringing in someone who has criminal record, very terrible criminal record into their organization. Now, not only does that person become a risk themselves, are a risk to themselves, they also are a risk to the organization, they're a risk to the entire staff. Take for instance, if that candidate goes ahead and becomes employed, or that goes unchecked, becomes employed and is successful at defrauding. Now, take for instance, it's going to now if that organization is not very, very strong financially, so that they can do the reimbursements and now follow up to retrieve what was defrauded from what the employee has defrauded the organization, then you know that there's going to be an issue. That's where the organization can be liquidated. Now, or maybe the person is recruited into the accounting department of a particular organization, and at the end of the day, the person makes away with a large sum of money, and the organization is required to be liquidated. Now, not only has this person caused problem for the organization, caused problem also for the other staffs. So now the other people who are working in the organization are going to suffer suffer a terrible fate because of the wrong person that was introduced into the job. So it is very much important. So this is very critical that it mitigates risk, and it seeks to curb fraudulent activities by leaving them to the body before it shows up. So now, remember, it does not just only end here, because most people, oftentimes these fraudulent tendencies do not just erupt overnight. Of course, it's there, and people can develop the tendencies. So it means they might be good, they might have been good all this while, but they can still develop fraudulent tendencies, maybe prior to the pressures of situations and the rest of that. But I think for the organization, there ought to be measures to checkmate that. Okay, now this the third one talks about ensuring workplace safety. Now, take for instance someone who is let's say who has engaged in uh, like physical conflicts that has led to the incapacitation of people, or that has led to somebody being totally incapacitated. It means that the workplace, people in the workplace are not safe. That's so some basic background checks are done. Now, remember, there are other health checks. We did talk about health checks that are also conducted. In that background check, health checks are also part of the things that are conducted. So now, in that instance, when we're checking through the health, there's a health status of that particular candidate. We want to ensure that their health does not endanger the other people who are working in that particular space. Remember, most people spend much of their time in the workplace, so it's more like a second home. So we need to that such place needs to be safeguarded, or needs to be secured excellently well, such that somebody else does not introduce a strange illness or disease within the workplace. So all these are done. That's where the background verification comes in, medical checks and the rest of that. Okay, we'll go ahead to talk about protecting the brand reputation. Now, take for instance, of course, we've heard about certain people defrauding organizations or institutions. From time to time, they always defraud, So this means has some kind of dent on brand reputation. So we want to ensure that this does not play out. So when we do the right background check, it helps to prevent a terrible reputation on the brand. Now we'll talk about improving the hiring decisions. Of course, when all these are properly put in place, it means our hiring decision is sound. Then, finally on the list is legal and regulatory compliance. Of course, for certain roles, there is a legal demand and regulatory demand that certain criteria need to be met before this person can function in this capacity, and before this person can do this or do that. So this is exactly what this background verification does. It ensures that there's a legal and regulatory compliance. So by doing the background verification, you ensure that this is actually done. So it means, take for instance, somebody claims to be an ACA and ACCA certified accountant. So now, how are we sure that this? So if we don't do background check, we cannot even say that this is actually true, that this person has all this certification there. But the person might even claim it on their profile because they're excellently well with accounting. They can do so well with accounting. They have a lot of their skill with it. They have a lot of experience in it, and they just attach ACCA and ACA to their profiles. And so if background checks are not done, Now, but there are certain levels that certain levels where they need this certification mandatory. They require it to function there. So in that instance, what do we do? If we actually go ahead to hire that person and it's actually a fake that they do not have those profiles, then that means there's an issue. There's serious issue there. So in the instance where maybe you have the government coming in to maybe conduct or see our compliance, then that means there's going to be an issue with that. So in that instance, this brings us to a close. Now, this forms all the benefits and more. Remember, it does not just end here. But there's so much and numerous benefits to background verification to ensure that every single person within the organization is actually authentic, very much authentic, meaning that whoever they say that they are actually who they have claimed to be. And this brings us to the end of this particular training in general. So I think I'll begin now to take questions. You can go ahead to ask questions and I'll begin to take them one by one. Okay. Okay, so you can begin to send me your questions now. Okay. So someone is saying, okay, I think there are no questions here. There are no questions. Okay, so please, if you have questions, you can just go ahead and ask that so that we can end the session for today. And we know we've concluded on this particular training and expect the to proceed on the other phase that has been communicated in the chat. So are there no questions thus far? It might be a general one. So go ahead, ask the question. Says, okay, what if the applicant's previous organization was very toxic and is still necessary? Of course. Okay, okay. Is it still necessary to put it on the CV for reference check because they may not say good about such a person? Now, okay, I understand that question, and it is I understand that that's a very good concern. Yes, there are toxic workplaces, but we're not saying that people should stay in a toxic workplace. In fact, we do not encourage that. So in that instance, the question is, whoever is conducting the background check is not a dummy, knows when to identify. That's what we're talking about, identifying or evaluating the details about or the details of that particular reference check. So when there is a bias, the person ought to know when there is a bias in this. So there's a bias here, there's a bias to this reply. We know, okay, that there's a bias. So because, for instance, let's say that they say the candidate is a thief or the candidate is, okay, if the candidate is a thief, what exactly did they steal? Was it reported? Can we have evidence of the report that was made in the police station? So if they cannot produce all this, then it actually did not happen. That's what's actually. So if you say that this person defrauded the organization, was it recorded? Was there any record of it? Is the police aware? Were they arrested? What exactly happened? How do we ascertain that this particular person was truly arrested and they actually defrauded the organization? I understand the place of intimidation where people maybe organization can use influences to intimidate maybe an erring staff. I understand those. So, but this is where these places this verification seeks to find out valid reports to ensure that this thing that is being said about this person is actually true and not from a biased person. Then, secondly, it might be that the person worked under a biased supervisor or a supervisor who hates them or does not dislikes their person. Of course, everybody must not like you as a person. So, but when the conversation, when that verification is being done, it will be deduced, okay, that maybe there's an issue or maybe the supervisor, they had issues with their supervisor. Take for instance, if I have a bias towards someone, if I'm going to do a report, it's going to be very clear. But as a supervisor, if I'm going to do a report about someone, I'm not going to definitely just say these are the terrible. I just go to list the terrible things that the person do. The person must have been a good before the person was hired into that. We saw potentials in that person. So it means that I should be able to outline all the positive sides of that person, and also need to outline the other sides that are not so good about that particular candidate. So everybody the sides that have that's good side versus the side not so good. So we want to compare that information. So we're not just asking for purpose of victimization. That's not the essence of verification. The essence of verification is to authenticate to authenticate the claims, to authenticate what this person have provided. Want to authenticate that okay, this person is actually who they say that they are. Remember, that's the essence of verification. Also, the that's background verification as well as the reference check. Okay, I think that's I've said enough on that. So brings us to the next one. It says, how can we ascertain the authenticity of a structured question received from reference regarding a candidate? Now, when someone was talking about structured question, okay, how can we ascertain the authenticity? Now, that this information that we get is authentic. I already said that earlier. Now, first of all, we want to find out the person that is providing this report is actually their supervisor. So it means it has, if this is a HR or it's a direct supervisor, then it means, first of all, it should even be coming from the company, because it should be coming from there's like more like a letter. There should be something that shows that this is coming from, it's corporate. This is corporate. Remember, we made a call. Well, if we made a call, we ensure that, okay, this is the person that we talked to. Then, certainly, if you are still uncertain about that, that is where you have to physically visit that place. Physically visit that place. Then there are times where it can be, you can decide, okay, that they will have to send a mail. A mail is sent, and we'll get back an information, we'll get back a mail in response to our mail that was earlier sent. So they're going to reply. There is no how that they will include something that is not authentic in that email. Of course, it's going to be indicted. Very much important to note them. So remember that we are saying the person that we want to engage in this process of reference is a high-ranking officer. And no high-ranking officer will start saying or providing fake information. They will provide the information as it is. Of course, they're going to give you the positive versus the not so good. So at the end of the day, you can make your assessment on that. That's all we're saying there. Okay, I think the next question says, in the aspect of reference, can we make use of our parents, uncles? I made reference to those particular places. I said earlier that references are best in workplace references. These particular ones are the ones that you just ask are for good behaviors. More like that's where if there are nobody to provide this, we go to court to get affidavit of good behavior. That is on its own. But this particular one is to ascertain that's work behavior. So in this instance, a workplace, we need references from the workplace. In the previous workplaces where that candidate has worked. Now, in the instance where that person has not worked in any place before, this affidavit of good behaviors is what stands in. References from possibly their pastors, their imam, their culture, their community leaders can stand in this particular place. That can stand in this space for them. But once the person actually have places where they have worked before, then the references must be demanded from that places where they have worked. Okay, we'll go ahead to say the next one says, please, what has finding out who a candidate is staying with has to do with giving a candidate a job. Okay, I believe that's from Blessed Forever. Please, I believe maybe you did not hear me correctly. Kindly, if you can play back and understand what I was saying. I made reference to those, maybe you were not in attendance with the previous sessions that we had. What we are saying is using non-existent address. Nobody has any business with where you are staying. You can stay anywhere you want. What we are saying is don't use the wrong addresses on your CV. Don't use non-existent addresses on your CV as a candidate. That's exactly what we are saying here. Because in the event of verification, that it will be found out that that candidate does not live or does not reside in that place where they use as their address. That's what we are saying. Not necessarily where the person is living. You might stay with whoever you please. It's nobody's business and has nothing to do with nobody, has nothing to do with giving the person a job. Most people sport and go back during the weekend. We understand those situations. That has nothing to do. I cannot just come and say I live in XYZ place. I haven't had the temerity to put addresses on that particular place. I say I stay in this place in Lekki, only for verification to be done. And you don't even stay in that place in Lekki. It's wrong. So it's misleading for a candidate to say, okay, I stay in XYZ place in this place or in that place, and there's no record that that person even existed in that place. That's the statement. That's the record, or that's the statements we are making here. So please let's get that fact right and not let's not mix it up. Okay, let's go ahead to talk with okay. The next question says, okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the next question says, is it advisable to put where you serve on your CV because it's a 1 year and short period? Oh, of course, it's very much advisable. Please, you can go ahead and put the place where you serve. Remember, I made mention about something that even if you work in a place for 3 months, it's not wrong to put it on your CV. Most places, most jobs are contract. Take for instance, if I'm a software developer, some job is just for 3 months, some are for 6 months, some contracts are just for 1 year. And after that 1 year, if it is not renewed, I will like drag the employer that you must renew my contract. No, that's not what we are saying. The question is on your CV, kindly indicate that this is an NYSC. Kindly indicate that this is a contract job. Kindly indicate that this contract is a 6 months contract or a 3 months contract. That's what we are saying here. That indicate that this is a 3 months contract. It is a 6 months contract. It is not like a regular job. Understand? So what we're saying is there's a difference from somebody who gets a regular job and has no staying power. That's a different thing. That's not a different scenario that we're trying to correct here. So it's completely different. So if you have a job and it's a contract job and you execute that contract job, by all means, put it there, include the accomplishments within that time frame. Because even within 3 months, I can accomplish so great. So that means you're definitely a results-oriented person. Okay. Let's okay, I think that was from Stella. I hope I answered your question excellently well. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about I've had several recruiters ask me who am I staying with, and they claim they're staying with their boyfriend, doesn't show integrity. Well, I think I've answered that question. Please, if you're just joining now, please refer to the previous sessions. I cannot just continue going over and over on issues of residence and where people stay. I've made mention of that, please, so we don't go ahead and misconstrue the details of the training. What we're saying is do not include fake address on your CV. That's the essence of that particular section. So wherever anybody is staying with, there's no business. They can stay wherever they want to. They can even stay inside the water. It's nobody's business. The question is provide the address such that when a verification is done, you live there. Not that you provide an address and at the end of the day, you don't live there. That's what we're saying. Okay. Okay, if someone was sacked from the previous places of work, can it be? Of course, it should be included in the CV. It should be included because it's going to create a gap. And every HR officer or a recruiter who is interviewing you would ask question about any gap on your CV to understand because it's going to seem as though you're hiding something. The question is, why were you sacked? That's what we're saying. Why were you sacked in the place where you worked? So there is a balance. The person gets to hear your own side of the story. Then if you are going to be hired, of course, maybe if they're going to reach out to the organization, then they get their own side of the story, then the truth will definitely surface. That's all. So I think there's nothing to be afraid about. The question is, you worked here. You include this on your CV. It's imperative that you say you have this experience and you can do this. You can do that. Take for instance that it's that place where you actually worked for that maybe for that 1 year. you did, the skills that are required is what you did in that place for 1 year. You want to include it. So that's the main thing. You definitely want to include it because it will count. It will count for you. Let's say we need a 3 years or a 2 year experience in digital marketing, and you have that 2 year experience in that particular place. You want to include it. Because take for instance, this particular job where you fit into this role, but because you did it in a place where you were sacked, there may be a lot of reasons why you were sacked. Nobody is saying that you stole. Stealing or fraud is not often the reason for people being sacked in the workplace. There's different reasons. It could even be from bias or from false accusation. So there are different reasons why people can get sacked in the workplace. So there are or different for different reasons and different engagements. So the question is, the truth will definitely be unraveled. Okay, I think that is all the questions that we have had thus far. If there are any other questions, I hope they come in. And if they don't come in now, we can just go ahead and end the session. And please refer to all the details, all the messages that were sent in the chats. Just reply to them while we end the session now. All right. Okay. I think that will be all. We've done so well all through this period, and it's been great in having this session of training with every of the participants. Go ahead and flow through with your the questions that have been sent to you, and we can go ahead and close this session. Okay. So did somebody just drop a question now? Okay, and to verify it says, and to verify the site candidates on one side of the story, can we contact the candidate's company or to do the reference? To verify, this is where verification comes in. When you during the interview, that's when you get the candidate's side of the story. If that profile is great that you want to follow through, you follow through the profile, conduct the interview, then you go ahead. Then it is in the stage of verification. The stage of verification and reference check, that is where you can get the other side of the story that you want. Take for instance, the person was sacked. What we're doing now, we're not mentioning why was the person sacked. So the question is, all the questions have been listed there. So from what the reply they give to us, it will deduce the fact that okay, this is why this person was sacked in the first instance. I think that is that. Okay, I think I have answered the questions that have been sent. All right. Thank you so much for participating in this session. Enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, we'll bring this training to a close now.